Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. This is a special edition of the workshop podcast. As you guys might or might not know, I had to leave town for about a week and a half to go across country to go back to be with some family who had some medical issues. And I still wanted to make sure you guys had some content. So I thought I'd sit down and record some of these mini workshop podcast episodes for you. They'll, in theory, be in the kind of 15 to 20-minute range. Anyway, as you guys know, anybody wants to know more about who I am, the easiest and quickest way is to go by toolmantim.co. That's toolmantim.co. Find all my social links there, the monthly newsletter. You find links to the shop where I've got way over 100 products that I recommend, stuff that I've used and abused that's made me money or saved me money in my handyman business. Okay, so this week, guys, we're going to talk about making excuses, or more importantly, quit making excuses. This seems to be rampant in the preparedness field. It seems to, honestly, it's just about anywhere. In the entrepreneurship, I wish I could. I'd love to. I might someday. I just can. It's in the way. It gets in my way. It drives me crazy. I just, the longer I'm a content creator, the more and more excuses that I see. And that is okay. I have made excuses. I still do make excuses. I try to limit my excuses, but when we make an excuse, it gets in the way of our personal success. So what brought this idea, this concept on for a video? Well, it's been, I don't want to say lately, but of course, my most popular videos on YouTube are my generator videos. And so, of course, the more views you get, the more comments you get. The more comments you get, the more chance you're going to get a negative one, which is fine. I can handle negative ones. But what I can't stand is the constant negative, just simply negative for the sake of negative. I've had a bunch. I guess a couple of them are. You guys know I love the Furman tri-fuel generator. The thing is a beast, and it's cheap. It's less than $1,000 for sure for a 9400 peak watt generator that runs on 3 different fuel sources. So this one comment is what really spurred this on. And the gentleman, I believe it was anyway, left a comment to the extent of, why in the world would you ever support that, non-democratic Chinese? Why would you buy Chinese junk? Why would you buy a product sent overseas from China? Well, okay. Great. Do you have an alternative for a tri-fuel generator made in America that's under $1,000? I mean, where do we go with this? You can have your personal opinion on whatever you want. But if I was to turn around and ask that person, hey, well, what kind of generator do you have? Oh, I don't have one. Oh, really? Well, why is that? I just haven't bought one. So are you making excuses for me? Are you trying to convince me? Or are you trying to convince yourself that you don't need a generator? I mean, hey, listen, if you don't want to buy something from China, that is your prerogative. I have no problem with that. But me, simply, I need to be practical. I have a budget. I want to get the most generator I can get for the least amount of money that balances it out with quality. And I'm willing to, make certain concessions when I'm out there looking to buy something like that. Now, hey, go ahead. If you want to have certain standards that you're not going to go beyond, not a problem. But don't hide those, don't hide excuses under the guise of standards. Don't say, oh, I'd never buy that, simply because you just haven't got off your ass and went out and bought yourself a generator yet. Sometimes we let the perfect get in the way of the good. And hey, ideally, would a North American made sub $1,000, 9,000 watt tri-fuel generator be ideal? Yes. However, if I want to have a generator that'll run my entire home, I need to go with the Furman, which, is made overseas. And that is what it is. Now, here's another example. Here's another one that I got recently, and I had to share about it. And somebody seen that I was hooking up my generator to natural gas. And they come back to me and, oh, why would you ever hook into natural gas? That's the first thing they shut off in a shit hits the fan emergency. And I just ignore them. But I've kind of put this stuff in the back of my mind. I've kept notes on it. And I thought, you know what? This is definitely something that I need to deal with again, because what are we preparing for? Are we like, what is the most likely scenario? A near catastrophic world ending disaster where all utilities are shut off? Or should we be practical about this sort of thing? And should we be preparing for something like a winter storm or a hurricane or a hailstorm, something that knocks out local infrastructure? Has anybody looked lately? Power lines are above ground in most places. They're below ground in some places, but maybe I'm wrong here. But has anyone seen natural gas lines that are above ground? I never have. I'm sure there's a few, but that being said, in my area, in the nearly decade that I've lived on the prairies, we have not had a single natural gas outage. But you know what we have had? Lots of power outages. And, am I going to stop keeping gas on hand simply because I can tap into a virtually unlimited source of fuel for my generator? No, I keep propane on hand. I keep gas on hand. But why the hell wouldn't I want to set up and hook into natural gas in case there's a power outage? I mean, it has to be an awful situation in order to need to have for there to be no natural gas. And the whole time I've been out here, there's only one time when there was nearly an outage in a nearby town. That was the only time it's been over 8 years or about 8 years now. So nearly a decade. So, I mean, hey, if you want to use an excuse that, well, I can't hook up to natural gas because in the event of an EMP, natural gas isn't going to be available anymore. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Ain't that the truth? However, I'm prepping first and foremost for the things that are most likely to happen to my family. Things like a power outage. And if I can tap into unlimited gas, natural gas, great. Am I going to store, 20, 30, 40, 50 gallons of gasoline? Yep. Am I going to store a half dozen 20 or 30 pound tanks of propane? Abso-friggin-lutely I am. But I'm not going to use an objection, an excuse really, coached in the idea of an objection to leave me away from not hooking into a virtually unlimited source of natural gas or a source of fuel. So, throw these damn excuses straight out the window because there's literally no need of it. It makes me mad. I get it, but we have to be practical in some of this stuff too. Like, if you want to read your end of the world books and all of this stuff, great. I read them too. I love them, but don't let your mindset be, well, I'm not going to do it because, I'm not going to grow a garden because the zombies are going to eat it. Like, piss off, man. Like, this is so bad. If you're going to get yourself, if you don't want to grow a garden, don't grow a garden. If you don't want to hook up to natural gas on your generator simply because you don't want to do the work or you don't want to spend the money or, reason 1, 2, 3, or 4, great, no problem. But don't tell me that I shouldn't do it either. And don't pretend like the reason is because it's going to get shut off right away. No, it's not. It's there. It's for us to use. And you know what? If we're in a situation where natural gas is completely gone, well, we have got a hell of a lot worse problems than that. And we're going to be, needing to work our way through and ration what little bit of fuel we have left. So, you know what? The excuses, we need to let them go, man. Like it's foolish, and I think some of this comes out of fear, because unfortunately, a lot of preparedness minded folk end up coming to prepping out of fear. And, it might be like, well, whether it was Y2K or the Mayan calendar or whatever the hell it might happen to be, but you're scared. Maybe you read a book on an EMP and thought, oh, well, this is it. But then all of a sudden you get into it and you're like, you know what? This is a way to overcome some of my fears. This is a way to look at and establish solutions to some of the problems that could be really bad if I let them go without dealing with them. So I think some of these excuses absolutely come out of fear. I mean, and I think that's where a lot of the negativity in the preparedness field comes from, and some of the, conspiracy minded folk and things like that. You know, it's those people just sitting around waiting for the end of the world that said, well, I can't do nothing about it, so I'm not going to do anything about it. Okay, well, how about you do something about it instead? Because to me, that's what's important, doing something. I mean, yeah, if you're doing the wrong thing, well, that, that's a whole nother kettle of fish we're not going to talk about today. But the literal fact that you can do something should mean you should try to do something. Just because, you might be negative, you might be scared, don't let that get in your way of dealing with some of these, more common geographical disasters that you may end up needing to deal with in your area. Sometimes it comes not just from fear, but maybe from feeling overwhelmed as well. Because again, somebody who's new to prepping, or they're just new to, their eyes have been open and realize, hey, you know what? We don't always talk about some of the bad things that can happen, but you know what? They're there. And by talking about them, it helps us deal with them. It helps us process that anxiety that comes along with it. And, like I said, if you're new into this sort of thing and you do feel overwhelmed because you're like, well, I need to go out and I need to get food and water and, 3 years worth of antibiotics and a literal pallet of ammunition and a freeze dryer and a dehydrator and a pressure canner and on and on and on and on. You know what? Don't let that get you down. Honestly, any preparedness, any little step you do get you in the right direction. You know what? And then sometimes, honestly, there's just some of those cranky old bastards that see rain in every single rainbow, and there ain't nothing we can do about it. I posted a video a while back on a security camera system, and I love the damn thing. It's just under $200. And somebody replied to that review with like a double-sided 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, basically that many words worth of a reply. And the entire thing was like a doctoral thesis on why this camera system was a literal piece of shit. And I thought, oh, well, okay. So I read through it, and for starters, 90% of the objections the person had were dealt with in my review. And I thought, well, this is kind of strange. So I against my better judgment, I responded and I said, here's my review. Watch the review. You're going to see that most of what you said is not true. And the few things that you're concerned about are nothing burgers. There's something that does not need to be worried about. And they said, oh, I can't watch the video. My internet's not too good enough. They had enough time to write an entire page response to why this product was no good. And they'd never used the product. They hadn't watched the review, but damn it, they were convinced that a person shouldn't use it. And what do you do from there? I mean, that's like beating your head against a wall. I knew better. I shouldn't have talked, but anyway. So yeah, it was just one of those situations where you're like, really? Come on. And again, there's, like I said, there's a ton of pessimism in there, but optimism and prepping do not need to be mutually exclusive. Honestly, I think optimism and prepping should go hand in hand. They should complement one another because, why would you prep if you just figure, what, doesn't matter. It's going to be a coronal mass ejection or whatever the heck it happens to be this week, and nothing's ever going to be good. Why would you prep? Because you think, well, it doesn't matter what I do, nothing's ever going to be good enough. So I think a healthy dose of realism and optimism can go a long way in making you much more prepared and much more effective in your preps. Because again, it's easy to get lost. And with all the crap that's been going on the last few years, it is really easy to get lost in all kinds of stuff. And first off, let's throw this out there. Stay the hell away from the news if you can help it, because man, there's nothing worse for a person's psyche and mental non-well-being to sit down and have a steady diet of news media, because it is going to kill you. It just breaks your brain. If you watch that, you figure the ozone layer is burnt to pieces. The tides are going to rise and flood us all. The world's going to have world war. I mean, everything that's there, just leave it alone. Ignore it. Live your life. And so, okay, I always try to be a solutions-oriented person. So, I'm going to step down off my soapbox a little bit. I'm going to stop preaching a bit about making excuses. I'm going to tell you, quit making friggin' excuses. I'm still guilty of it on occasion, but it's an important thing. So stop making them. So what do we do? How do we stop? Where do we focus our energy instead? Well, first off, focus your energy on doing something instead of worrying about something. So, if you're sitting around worrying all the time that this, that, or the other thing's going to happen, then you're spending all of your energy on being negative, on making excuses, on saying that generator's from China and it's a piece of crap, so I'd never buy it. Well, okay, but I did. And now I have a generator that runs my whole house. And oh, I would never hook up natural gas to that generator because that's the first thing they're going to shut off. Well, I did. And you know what? I did both of those things. And now I have a generator that can run for an infinite amount of time in 99.9% of circumstances. I didn't make excuses on those two instances. So, focus on doing. Find yourself a project that you can do that maybe doesn't cost a whole lot. Maybe set up a small little, maybe pick up one of those Harbor Freight introduction solar kits and teach yourself how to use solar. Or maybe pick up an inverter that you can run off your car and learn, hook it up, spend an afternoon playing with it, get your car running, hook your inverter directly to your battery. And then, okay, if it's an 800-watt inverter, see what you can run. How many lights can you run off that? Can you run a couple of fans? Could you run a small teapot? There's so many things, but focus on doing instead of, if all you ever say is, well, I don't have the money to buy myself a whole house backup inverter generator. Well, no, that's okay. You know what? Totally fine. Maybe start looking on Facebook buy and sell or Kijiji in Canada, Craigslist in the US for somebody getting rid of a couple of inverters, or a cheap little generator, or, instead of focusing on what you can't do, that's the worry, focus on what you can do and put your energy into that. And then next, of course, start with small steps, guys. Like just take little baby steps. You guys have heard me say 1,000 times the old Bill Murray movie, What About Bob? And he was, he had, I believe it was social anxiety and he did not want to leave his home. And so the guy told him like, baby steps, Bob. And so he would start doing like baby steps out the door, baby steps down the walkway, baby steps out onto the sidewalk. And you know what the baby steps did? They ended up getting him a lot further than if he stood there paralyzed with fear. There's the old meme where you see a ladder and the first ladder has, 75 rungs all spaced apart at a nice even way. And the next one has like 15 rungs, but they're so spread apart that you can't make it. And the person on the 75 rung ladder is at the top and the person with the 15 rung ladder is still sitting at the bottom. And that's the idea, small little steps. So if you come to preparedness and you say, well, I'm throwing my hands up. I can't have a month's worth of food on hand because I can't afford it, or it's too much work, or I'm going to run out of money before I manage to get prepped. Well, you know what? Can you work on one day of food? Can you work on one meal's extra food? Can you find ways to can some of your food? There's so many solutions out there, little things that you can do. And that to me, that excites me. So yeah, focus on small steps, focus on doing instead of worrying, and then surround yourself with people who are successful at doing. And this is super important. I've got I can't fill everybody in on this yet, but there's a big collaboration project that I have coming up that is so exciting. And everyone in it is doers. They're all content creators and they're motivating as hell. So if you can't find anybody locally to surround yourself, someone who is doing, find someone online, find some online communities where you can interact with other people and you can say, I found my doers. Because if you surround yourself with doers, you're going to do. And if you surround yourself with don'ters, you're going to don't. And that is the truth. So if you want to get more shit done, hang around people who get more shit done. Because those are the type of people that people look at and they say, I don't know how they get so much done. And all of a sudden you're with them and you're like, wow, I'm motivated. Let's do it. And then realize that something's better than nothing. Like I said, sometimes we get focusing on the perfect, the best, having 6 months worth of food on hand. Well, like I said, remember 3 days worth of food. Actual 3 days of edible food on hand is worth so much more than wanting to have 30 days worth of food and doing nothing about it. So just remember, the baby steps go along with something is always better than nothing. And to me, that helps beat those excuses straight out of your head. And again, embrace what you can't control. It's kind of foolish or funny or whatever, but I grew up in an evangelical home. with a paralyzing fear of the end of the world. And it was almost, I don't even know what the word for it was, but it certainly wasn't rational. And that was, growing up in the 80s with the hellfire and brimstone and all the stupid videos we used to watch. And I was, for years, I was scared, paralyzed to fear simply because of all that was ingrained in me from when I was little. And so I realized, you know what? I need to move on from this. I absolutely do. And so I embraced the fact that I'm like, you know what? That thought is always going to be up there and it's always going to be something that I was taught as a kid. However, it's time to embrace what I can't control and I'm going to move on from it. And if you're worried about something you can't control, well, focus on the stuff that you can. If you're worried about an earthquake, well, you can't control the earthquake, but what you can control is making sure your pantry is earthquake rated, or making sure you have fronts on your shelves so that all your nice glassware doesn't fall off and break. You can make sure that you have a reinforced room you can go to, 100 different things, just little things that'll help take the edge off of the fear. So guys, I hope that helps. These were, I want them to be practical. They're a little more esoteric too, a little more pie in the sky, kind of philosophical, but I wanted to make sure you guys had something. I didn't want to leave you completely alone while I was out east visiting with family. And so I thought we would do some of this stuff. I hope you enjoy it. If you want to hear more of this kind of stuff, well, email me, therealtimcook@gmail.com, or fill out the form at toolmantim.co, or just leave a message in the video, or just respond in any way you want. Add me on social. I hope you enjoy this, guys. And if you want to hear more of the Workshop podcast, hit that subscribe button. I'm literally available everywhere you can find me. Easiest way is to find all the links on the website. So guys, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.